there at it. But see, they couldn't see beyond the flesh. They couldn't see beyond that human because they were looking for something through their carnal reasoning, their carnal eyes. You're never going to see God. You're never going to be able to see Jesus in His fullness through carnal reasoning or carnal eyesight. Because the Bible plainly tells us the carnal mind is an enmity to God. The carnal mind is an enmity to God. Can't decipher the things of God. Can't understand the things of God. Can't discern the things of God. Carnality cannot ever discern the qualities of God. The works of God. What God has accomplished on that cross for you and I today. It only comes through the Spirit of God in us. That awakens our inner man and lets that inner man realize what he has accomplished on that cross. What he did, the work that he did on that cross. And you see, we can't understand it by our wisdom. And I'll show you why. Let's go to the book of James. Third chapter of James, and I'd like to read verses 15 through 18. This is talking about the wisdom of the world, not godly wisdom, in this first verse. But then it goes down to the 17th verse that talks about the wisdom of God and the difference between the two wisdoms. Verse 15, this wisdom descendeth not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure. Think about it. First pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. You see a vast difference in the two wisdoms. The wisdom of the world, or the earthly wisdom, and the wisdom of God. The wisdom of God produces these things that was mentioned in here. The purity, the peaceableness, the gentleness, the easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality. I think it was in the book of James where James said that if you are a respecter of persons, you sin. Being a respecter of persons is a sin. And the wisdom of God, if you've got the wisdom of God, you're not going to be partaker of that kind of a situation. If you've got the wisdom of God, you're not going to be partial. You've got the wisdom. Now where did all this come from? Where did all this take place? Back there at the cross. When Jesus did what He did. See, we never had access to any of this before. We never had access to the wisdom of God before. We never had access to the Spirit of God. We never had access to the power of God except back under the old law, under the Old Testament. They had to offer a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice, to even come close to God. God had to deal with those people back there from arm's length. They could not come into the very presence of God. But let me show you something that happened at His crucifixion when He gave up the ghost and He said, "It is finished." As soon as those words came from His mouth, the Bible said the veil of the temple was rent in twain. And God allowed us to go into the holiest of holies. Paul said,
Amen.
We can come right to the throne of God.
Yes.
And bring our petition before God. We couldn't do that before the cross.
Right.
It was not given to man before the cross. I don't care how wise a person you were back there. You couldn't step into that place. You couldn't step between that veil. You couldn't go beyond that veil. But because the work He did upon the cross and the offering that He performed on that cross, the suffering of what His suffering, you see. Think about this too. Every sin that was committed from the time of Jesus all the way back to Adam was put upon His shoulder. Every sin from that time forward was put upon His shoulder. It's no wonder in His prayer in the 18th chapters of John. See, they think in the book of Matthew that His disciples asked Him, said, Lord, teach us to pray. Now, all He did is give us a guideline on how to approach God in prayer. That was not His prayer. I'll tell you where His prayer was. They call that the Lord's Prayer. But the Lord's Prayer was really in the 18th chapter of the book of John. Where He was in Gethsemane. And He was facing something, the flesh part of God, not the Spirit of God. See, the only thing that died was the flesh part of God. You can't kill God. God is not somebody you can do things to like you can do to His flesh. But all that pressure, see, He was sinless. He was on this earth for 3.5 years. Never broke a law. Never transgressed the law of God. See, He gave you and I the supreme example on how to walk before God. But even then, we couldn't. Even His disciples had problems with Jesus at times. Even His disciples at times didn't understand Him. Because usually every time He started talking about He was going to have to go to the grave, they wouldn't accept it. They couldn't accept it because they couldn't understand why He had been brought to this earth. He was not brought to this earth to heal all the sick. He was not brought to this earth to open all the blind eyes. He was not brought to this earth to raise the dead and bring them back to life. What His purpose was, what His underlying purpose was, yes, that was just, you could say, icing on the cake. What He was trying to show you and I, what He was trying to show mankind in all this was who He was, what His powers were, and how He could do things.
That's right.
But they still couldn't see like they could see after the day of Pentecost. They still couldn't understand Him fully. They couldn't see Him fully. They couldn't see what He was there for. They were looking for a Messiah, yes, and they believed that He was a Messiah. But they were looking for an earthly kingdom. That's why He told him in almost all of the books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, time out and time again, He would tell them, my kingdom is not of this world. In other words, this is not going to be a natural kingdom. And He continually talked about the kingdom of heaven. That's what His kingdom was. A spiritual kingdom. But see, they were not looking at Him through the spiritual eyes yet. And they couldn't understand Him. They couldn't really comprehend Him. But I'll tell you, after He did what He did upon that cross, and later on, when He told them in the last chapter of the book of Luke, He said, tarry ye into Jerusalem until you be endued with power. After that, the Holy Ghost is come upon you. Or was that in the first chapter of the book of Acts? Might have been in the first chapter of the book of Acts. But He told them, He said to wait till the time. Because they still couldn't see Him.